Okay. Because she would obviously understand
because
more.
She was the whole inspiration behind it.
Yeah.
And I told her what I was doing, and I didn't go into much detail because I don't know. I know that she wouldn't also understand it because the whole blood, genes, and me giving part of my blood to somebody.
Yeah.
It's still something that would be sensitive in my culture.
Yeah.
So I didn't go into much detail because that's something I can't explain.
But do you think if you had told them, how do you think they would have felt about it in knowing your own family? How do you know, because there's a reason obviously you didn't tell them. How do you think they would have,
Well, I think they've come to expect a lot of things from me. Like, they're not shocked by anything I do because basically I donate blood. I decided one day that I'm going to go to my mother and tell her, Mom, if I die, I'm going to be an organ donor. And I think that shocked her enough. So I don't think she would, as much as she knows the reasons behind everything that I do. But her having grown up in a different time,
different environment, etc. Okay.
But I know that she supports me in everything that I do. Okay.
Yeah. And then tell us about the steps in qualifying to becoming an egg donor. I'd like to hear from the both of you, if you don't mind. Let's start with Jenny.
Well, we receive an application form from donors at the outset. Essentially, donors have to be between aged 18 and 34. They have to be mature enough to understand what the process entails.
Okay.
They have to have a healthy BMI, so not too overweight or underweight. They need to not be predisposed to any specific genetic aspects which are concerns, such as bipolar, schizophrenia, hemophilia, anything like that that can carry over.
Okay.
And those are the contraceptives that donors use. Needs to be appropriate at the time of their donating. So they need to be having regular menstrual cycles. And they really need to be understanding of the process in a nutshell.
Okay.
But the egg donor situations, their situations changes all the time. So prior to a donation, we would always confirm that their situation is still
the same,
updated and appropriate for their donation.
And with you, Pumi, how was the whole process? Tell us what you went through.
Well, in the beginning, before like the actual donation, I had to go and it was a whole sitting with a psychologist, I think. And they ask you just about everything about you and about your family, and you fill out a form and you have to declare basically any illnesses from your grandparents down to your dog. Well, not exactly,
but I get the idea.
So you get assessed psychologically, you get assessed medically to see if you fit enough, and there's a whole lot of things to find out if you're ready. I mean, the type of things that they assess you on, it actually makes you also think about it, because if you're going just there because you want an experience, you're not going to be able to cope with it afterwards.
Okay.
So if once after the whole assessment, then okay, I'm doing this because it's something that I want to do.
Did you have any doubt at some point, maybe just before they extracted the eggs, or, during the process where you're like, oh, gosh, maybe not,
Well, I don't think I have had any doubts, because to me, I don't see why I should be selfish just because I'm not ready to have kids, and I don't see myself having kids. Why should I rob another person of the chance to? So
fair enough. Okay. ever met your egg recipient? What is the process in that?
No, egg donation in South Africa is completely anonymous and confidential. So a recipient really associates and identifies a donor based on her information. And we wouldn't even show pictures of donors. So even if the recipient and the donor were in the clinic at the same time, they wouldn't be able to identify one another.
So they wouldn't know. It's very James Bondy.
And the recipient is also not known to the donor.
Mm-hmm.
But they see pictures, childhood pictures if possible, because that helps recipients identify with facial features, or maybe it's just something in the way the donor looks that makes them feel warm and fuzzy towards that person.
Okay, very interesting. And are you not afraid of feeling somewhat emotionally attached? Like once you've given that part of yourself, do you not fear that emotional attachment?
Well, no, because I don't know. I don't think of the eggs as. I don't even get to see the eggs. So no, I don't.
Okay, so there's no emotional attachment whatsoever.
No, there is that low, like a speck of fear that what if one day I'm walking down the road and I see somebody who looks exactly like me, but I know
But you wouldn't know, exactly.
Like 0 to none. So.
Okay. And is there a fee? Is there like what is the once you're done for all your trouble and everything, is there a fee that they get paid, or how does it work?
No, you don't actually get paid because, like I said, you're not doing it because of any other reason but to help somebody else. So you don't get, like, you don't go. It's not a job where you do something.
Go in and you're rewarded for your work and your troubles and whatnot. Okay, and Jenny, would you like to elaborate on that as well?
Yes, I would. It's just that tissue donation in South Africa, you cannot get paid for that, but there is an established donation that donors get for their inconvenience and for their gesture of being committed.
Okay, so there you have it. I mean, it's something that's genuinely from the heart, and something that you do, for whatever reasons that you do it, and it can be done by any and everyone as long as you fit the criteria. So wow, that's quite interesting. So there you have it. You don't have to, be anybody specific or special or whatever. As long as you fit the criteria, anyone can be an egg donor. And for whatever reasons that you have, whether you feel emotionally attached, like Pumi with her aunt, or whether you just want to do something good, or whether it's just, I wouldn't advise for experience, as Pumi said. It's rather something that you should do from the heart and really sit down and think about it. And then what are the common risks, or what risks are there possible, to the recipient in terms of medically, and also to the donor herself? Are there any kind of,
Well, there's always the aspect of the program is not successful. The donor doesn't produce any eggs because it is an artificial process, and each person responds differently with every cycle and with every donation. So you may not get the desired outcome, but for people who are needing to proceed with donor eggs, it's a chance they have to take to avail themselves for this opportunity. Medically, it is a medical process. So there are always risks in anything in life.
Yeah. So basically, it's like walking out on the street. You could get bumped by a truck or whatever. So you just need to, I guess, prepare yourself and know that you're okay with taking this decision.
The medical risks are also explained to the donor by the medical persons prior to proceeding. But we work with established fertility clinics who specialize in egg donation. So there's an established process, there's extensive controls, there's a process, there's care, there's support, and that's the best way to do it, is to work with the professionals. Okay.
And how many times can one donate? So let's say Pumi's donated once and she feels like, actually, I wouldn't mind doing this again. This was a good thing. How many times can one donate? Is there limits? Do you have to stop at some point?
You can donate a maximum of 6 times, to the extent that 6 children are conceived. And after every donation, we also have to assess that the donor has responded well and gives the recipient an optimal opportunity to conceive. There's not a lot of people who do donate 6 times. Because sometimes they fail to respond that well to treatment, so they may stop after 2 or 3, or they may leave the country or not be available anymore, or they may have achieved their quota of 6 children or 6 donations. And sometimes there are people who donate 6 times because they really enjoy the experience and the opportunity.
And then, like, after that 6 times, is there a break and then you can start again? Or that's it?
That's it.
But then, I mean, someone can always just jump to another agency, isn't it? Is that...
Well, you can't manage people's own ethics, but after that many donations, we always communicate to the donor, thank you, you can't do this again, and that is enough. And generally, we've got established relationships with the clinics, so they would know that the specific donor has donated through us before, and they would often check the number or any specific information they need about a donor with us.
Okay, no. And then, how come that it's not well known in the country? I mean, you know, just coming up with this topic, I spoke to a couple of people, and, you know, when I told them about egg donation, they were like, what is that? You know, like, where does that come from? What is that? How come the general population of South Africa doesn't know too much about egg donation? It's almost like it's a hush-hush taboo kind of thing.
Well, infertility is always a very private matter, and people often suffer extensively. All by themselves, because it's something people are not always comfortable sharing with everyone that they're going through this process. So that in itself is a very confidential aspect. And then the notion of egg donation is even more confidential, because if people do need fertility treatment, they first have to make peace that they need this treatment, then they have to make peace that they need donor eggs. So it's a process of emotionally going through that and being ready, and then they have to make a decision if they're going to disclose that or not. So if they choose not to disclose it, that aspect of privacy
comes into play.
But although it is still quite quiet, we go to a lot of efforts to communicate and create awareness of egg donation, so that people are starting to understand how they can help. We're talking about giving life and making a difference, and Tommy's an organ donor, but this egg donation is a great way to give while you're still alive.
Absolutely.
And there's no impact on you, it doesn't take away your own fertility, and you can make an amazing difference. And egg donors do really enjoy it, because they get the cards and the letters and they feel like they've had a purpose at that time, and they really contributed something significant. So they're also starting to talk to each other or friends and explain a little bit more. So the word is starting to spread, albeit slowly. Yeah,
definitely. And who would you say are the biggest donating groups, whether it be culturally, whether it be, you know, age-wise, or even just all together? Who are your biggest donators?
They are generally people who understand the process. So from our perspective, it's people who have access to the internet. That's if I can qualify my egg donor market in that perspective. I won't. There's not specifically more of one race group or another. The only race group where we have very few donors is the Indian group. Other than that, they range between 18 and 34. They may or may not be qualified. They may or may not have children, and they may or may not be working. So it's generally people who've heard about this, who understand it, who've taken the effort to go and read about it and understand it, and then want to do it. Sometimes people say to me, I should target, go to this place or go to that place and try and identify people, but that's not the way it works to find people. Egg donation is something that people need to understand, and then they need to feel moved about it and come forward.
Absolutely.
You can't really ask someone to be a donor.
Like, hey, can you give me your egg? I'll bring it back. Okay. And then how can one find out and learn more about egg donation? Because as you said, not too many people, you know, it's more people with internet access. How would you suggest perhaps one would find out more about egg donation?
Well, we've posted extensive information and talks and little clips, even on how the injections are done and everything, on www.babymom.co.za.
Okay.
The 2 is a number 2.
Is there a line that perhaps they can, or is it just the website?
Yeah, the website contains a lot
Everything.
of information.
Okay. Has there ever been a case where things kind of went wrong? It kind of went pear-shaped at some point, whether it's before or after? You laugh.
Well, it's life. So life always has unexpected situations.
Yeah.
Aspects where things don't really proceed well is maybe we've had great things where a donor program is all lined up and a recipient miraculously conceives with her own eggs.
Oh, that's great.
It's been great, but it is obviously a little disappointment for the donor because she's excited to proceed and everything has been set up. We don't have a lot of situations where donors withdraw because we try to make sure that they understand the process from the outset and they understand the commitment. And before any of the medical procedures take place, there's all the screening that we spoke about earlier.
That you do, yeah, the psychological.
Screening, which is also there to offer a little bit of support, and the medical screening. So before any costs are incurred from the recipient in terms of the treatment, they have assurance that the donor's hormone levels are right to give them the best chance to conceive. But there have been a few cases where donors have decided not to proceed because their boyfriend or parent hasn't supported the process and they've decided to keep it quiet, and then it was disclosed. So that's not nice because then we have to let people down.
So what support is provided post the whole procedure? Is there any post support? Do you get any phone calls? You mentioned cards and nice little things like that?
Well, as a donor, you can't, like, if there's anything that you need, you always have those lines open of communication. If there's any medical that you need, like if something doesn't go right afterwards, then you can always go to the clinic and I always have access to Jenny. I can call her anytime. I can call her like 10 months later and ask, oh, did it happen? And yeah, you're not alone, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's nice. So she's the egg godmother. And now, what about the conceived child? I don't know. You mentioned that there's this whole sort of it remains very anonymous. Do the parents, do you know of any cases, maybe not necessarily in South Africa, where, parents have told their children that, look, honey, you were conceived, via egg donation, or have you ever read an article where it said something like that? How does that go and how do they feel? What are the outcomes? How do the parents handle it?
Generally, South Africans choose to keep the process completely confidential. So they often don't even tell their own parents. It's the husband and the wife only who know about this process, and therefore they elect to not tell the child as well.
Okay.
That's the norm in South Africa, is keeping it utterly confidential. Every now and again we've come across cases from recipients abroad who have told me up front that they are going to disclose this, and for that reason they want specific information.
Yeah.
I actually got a message just before